I'm not going to lie. I was devastated this morning. Not at the loss. Fuck it. Whatever. If that's the case. It was at the prospect. And then I remembered the law of fudge, Fudge's law, whatever they call it. I've been independently developing the same basic thing. Wait. And while you wait, there's time to think. And while you think, you have to sort between realistic and unrealistic. You don't have to throw anything out, but you need to sort them. And once you have it sorted, you can start looking at Occam's razor. Tim Pool brought that up. Occam's razor is a good one to live by, but it's not law. Sometimes you have to examine both sides to understand which one is the simpler. I beg no pardon. And by the end of the day, had seen enough to tell me nothing's over and nothing is fucked. And there is a sense of relief, I guess subconsciously or at least subliminally. I wasn't noticing it, but it was there. I'll admit it's real. It's a real idea, I should say. There had been tension building up, like the fact that this dude is still alive is too good to be true. Now, when you are examining all sides, you have to consider that there are likely more than two, because they're not sides, they're just potentials, for lack of a better word. Unless I figure something better out, I'll change it. Start using that. There are like potential outcomes. In my head, they're kind of like fingers sticking out of a membrane, and they're very pointed. They're distinct likelihoods. And the real truth is that you're viewing from underneath, outside of the space of that potential sticking up, right? So you got like these fingers. But the reality is that you're looking at it upside down at like a gravity well, and you're looking at the outside of it. You're not looking inside of it. When you see the fingers in your head, that's what you're viewing. It's important because causality works like gravity. The shape of the causal plane is like space-time, and like in space-time, gravity, the light, that's why the speed of light is c in E equals mc squared. It's the speed of causality. Light moves at many different speeds, sometimes much slower. And it's the maximum speed that a massless particle can go, as close to infinite as possible within a given medium. So the speed of light in a vacuum is not the same as the speed of light in water. That's why water seems to have a color even though it's transparent. It's the refraction of certain wavelengths based on the fact that the speed of light in water is slower. Causality is, as far as potential, as you're viewing the future, you're viewing events that you are not in, so you are conceiving of things that are somewhere else from you. And in this sense, the fact that there's distance, there are many questions to do with, you know, how, when you really get into what they're saying about when you're looking back in time, whatever you're looking at through a telescope with this faint light over exposures, you were looking at billions of years into the past. In billions of years' time, all those galaxies have changed, so none of them would probably be recognizable. They don't explain that. It's too mind-blowing, or so they think. Maybe it is. The causal likelihoods are these dips. And it's like a marble rolling. It's not planets orbiting necessarily, although I suppose you could think of it as orbiting probabilities until they either do or do not occur. But then really you have the cause of the dip in the center that you're orbiting changing on a very rapid basis, because causality is not like a single solid line. And the best way I think of it is mentally, in an abstract way, which does not have any physical proximity. You are able to perceive these ideas of these tendrils of probability, but they're causal dimples. And so the thing is that you can also orbit a less likely thing because it'll make a bump. So instead of your causal plane being like this, something as likely is in the middle. But when your causal plane is like this, or like this, or like this, the likelihood is less. You can orbit that likelihood, but it's not the same as orbiting a gravity well and eventually spiraling into it. That is causality occurring. So when they graph space-time, the dimples and curvature of it, for like orbital mechanics, you have what are called Lagrangian points, which are mathematically prophesied or predicted points along the orbit where the objects are not, that can have orbital, areas around those parts. That's what Trojan asteroids are. There are solar observatories and satellites at various Lagrange points between the Earth and the Moon and the Sun and the Moon, the Sun and the Earth. And they're not orbiting like Jupiter has Lagrange asteroids and its Lagrange points with the Sun, 60 degrees along before and after Jupiter in its orbit. There are clumps of asteroids, but they're not a cloud orbiting like this. There is a bump that cannot be orbited in, and they orbit around that bump. And so when you watch the animations, you see, like, you got Jupiter, you got Trojans ahead and Trojans behind, and it's moving through the orbit. As it's doing that, you've got Jupiter's moons going around Jupiter, but then you've got these asteroids orbiting in a weird comma shape around this non-object point before and after, and the rotation speed has to do. It's all tidally involved. There's math to all these orbits. They're not random. They're all in sync with the Sun and Jupiter, even though they're not touching. Causality is like that. That's why astrology is actually a lot more viable than people realize. You just have to. Getting it from the newspaper isn't the same. The person that's reading it might know what it really means, but they're just putting this generic crap out. And there's more to it. There's a lot more interpretation that you discover what knowledge you already possessed that you didn't realize. You open up things in yourself. So you've got these tidal interactions. You've got Lagrange points. You've got gravity wells. And so causality is like that because space-time is actually based on causality. Thinking of causality in an abstract form allows you to graph this in your head in a sense. You don't necessarily, maybe your brain does the calculations and what you're seeing is accurate, but maybe not. There's really no way to test that at this point. And the ways to test that involve getting computers hooked into your brain, which is also scary. We don't want that. So you can create causal patterns with your actions, your words, your thoughts. But causing things to happen requires connecting yourself with that dimple. So I guess if you think of the dimples in space-time or causality, instead of having a planet in it, you would have like a fluid top. And if you crinkle and chop, push, depress, impress, a trough across your causality to connect to something, that surface is going to cover your dimple or your whatever too, your own causality. But we don't each necessarily bend causality in the way that events do, or mechanical things. You can have really simple causal dimple based on a repeatable, confirmed mechanical process that you push the button, this thing will happen, and the chances of it not happening pertain to mechanical failures, power loss, whatever, human error, operator error. But the actual thing has its own causality. Well, we have those in some respect, but in other ways we do not affect it directly, at least in ways that are practical to even talk about. So I'm not affecting causality as much lately. I am here and there. And when I do, I do it right now. I understand that. But looking at the other, I guess you kind of have to just slightly dimple it just a wee bit in order to even see it, even in an abstract. What I'm getting at is that it is positivity. It is optimism. It is not false. It is that realistically, nothing is fucked and nothing is over. So, if you're still with me at this point, hopefully you'll understand where I'm coming from, or at least what I'm talking about. Yes, there is a real, I don't know the odds. I'm not going to even venture to speculate. I don't want that on me. But yes, there is a non-zero possibility that that dude who everybody's talking about today is not dead. But it also may not be. And if it is, it's better that we don't know. It's better that we not receive any confirmation until a court date when this motherfucker walks in the room. How do they keep that secret? I don't think they can keep that secret. Maybe there's a false secret being kept of it just to fuck with someone or whatever. But I don't know. I think it's positive because it was a day for a large number of people to overwhelm the algorithm enough to get a message out, and everybody knew. And lots of people didn't, and lots of people learned. And some people still haven't learned, but they are now way fewer. It's a little scary because this is like a point of no return. This is over the edge and down the track or plunge or whatever you're doing. Because we know, they know that we know, things will only get more difficult from here for a while. But if everybody stays unified in knowing this, rather than get distracted and start haggling and arguing and taking sides, for this time, for a little bit, if everyone that knows manages to remember while they try and make us forget, more of us will remember later. It's not like you gotta wait, it'll be there. But you gotta remind yourself of what's really going on. And there are a lot of people seeing it. A lot of people it's laid bare what is going on, what is being done. And some of these people are going to try and go back and they're going to look at the news. They're going to watch that boob tube. They're going to see a bunch of shit that they didn't see before. And they're going to be like, how do I unsee this? You can't. You can't. That which is seen cannot be unseen. Once you know, that's it. You can drift off. You can find ways to forget. It's going to wake back up the next time they pull some bullshit. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an intrigue. It's going to be deep. There are aspects we thought were completely fake that maybe have some realism to them. But they're still propaganda. And there's going to be, of course, the news showing their ass and acting a fool. And there's a lot more people calling it out. A lot of people are like, yo, I know what this means. I'm sorry. You can't tell me that ain't true. What this means is that there are adult dolts, ADULT space DOLTS, adult dolts that are in positions of power in bureaucracy and all sorts of places. Thuds, right? That's what the Discords call them. I like that, by the way, but nobody gets it. It's too smart. There are these Thuddites, these adult dolts, people who should know better. And these people are watching the news and they are believing everything. They are drinking the Kool-Aid. Isn't that cool? Probably never ever have anyone here except for like 2 people to ever sit and watch. Uh-oh, somebody barfed. There are adults who drink the Kool-Aid. There are people, obviously, who are just not saying anything. Several very mainstream people were like, yo, hold up. So I mentioned the possibility that he's alive. There is the possibility that he's dead and that it makes no difference. There's a possibility that he's dead and it does make a difference, and there's a possibility that the difference won't be what you think it is. Look at how empty this room is now. And I feel it. There are all sorts of feints within feints that could be. This is obviously a pretty high stakes game. And there could be absolutely none. Oh, look at that Buddha belly. It shrank. You may not believe it. So yeah, there's all kinds of things it could be, or that it might not be. The overwhelming sense is of the positive. A positive outcome relative to what we're looking at. But do not discount conflicting, disagreeing, or less pleasant outcomes. For example, they may find grounds to impeach President Trump. What do you think of that? What do you think of that? I don't think that Trump is racist, but I think Pence might be accidentally. I think positive progress is at hand because lots of people don't like to swing racist around that would be expected to, and it's highly racist to expect them to. So we have to consider the possibility of a different president until, the election. And then if there's a Republican primary all of a sudden, what chaos. I'd say Ted Cruz maybe stands a chance. That guy's grown some balls lately, but I don't know if it's just because he knows he's not going to be president. What if that position opened up? I will say so far it looks like Bill Barr is a badass. I think he may have been the one engineering a lot of this. He may have just been like, you know what? Fuck these motherfuckers. I don't know. That it was filed in such a way that even should the principal defendant decease, the case is still open. To partner it with being part of a government whose presidency retains the executive control of the Smith modernized propaganda. Never forget that part. In theory, the president is the one who dictates that as of the Obama NDAAs. Or, I'll end it on this point, or there are other possibilities I might have missed. Or government and law are burps, ideas, vibrations in the air, sounds that we make, that we assign meaning to, concepts in the mind, thoughts that we use to restrain ourselves. But like a burp, it's just that's all it is. A burp is a concept. There's a thing. I'm not suggesting total anarchy, but what I am suggesting is that we not force ourselves to be ruled by the concept of authority and instead be ruled by the concept of decency, of what is better to be. I've been saying it's about personal responsibility. I'm still saying that. It's not just about owning your mistakes and the fucked up shit you do. It's about owning yourself and not doing fucked up shit. I know I'm guilty of the same. And here's where I am. But it's how we go about our daily treating people. And the less hypocritical we can be, the better. If the rule of law is null and void because nobody's getting prosecuted, we are not beholden to anything but ourselves. The issue with it just being inflicted on a group of people is if some of those people are not raised with the concept of self-control and owning your own actions, they are going to have difficulty blending in. What it comes to is we end up all living our lives, doing our thing, getting by, making do, and the government maybe not being quite so up in our face about everything. It's just more of a concept. There are people that file the things that need to be filed. That's government. So that's what I'll leave it at.